We have a God who at the core of his being is a God of relationship. Why is that? Because the Trinity is 3 in 1. The Father is continually giving himself over to the Son. The Son is continually giving himself over to the Father. The Holy Spirit is continually pouring himself into the Son. And the Spirit is pouring himself into the Father. There's this triune relationship that God is literally at the essence of his being. He is a God who lives in relationship. Isn't that amazing? Do you remember in the Gospels where Jesus is on the cross? And he went to the cross and he's bearing the world's sins and he's put up on the cross. And one of his last statements before he died was, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, right? And it means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Have you ever wondered that in Jesus' last moments, like, why would he say that God abandoned him? Why would he say that God forsook him? Why would the leader of a movement, the Christian faith, appear to show in the final moments of his death, right prior to his death, why would he seem to just give up his faith? To just give up and give in? Like, what would that communicate to his disciples? What would that communicate to his movement that he was trying to create? In his last moments, he renounces his faith. God, why have you forsaken me? I'm out. It's because Jesus wasn't saying that statement because of a lack of faith in the Father. He said that statement because bearing the full weight of sin of humanity on his shoulders on the cross, sin and God cannot coexist. When Jesus, sin separates us from God. So what was happening? When Jesus bore the weight of the sin of the world on the cross as he died, sin separates us from the presence of God. Literally, friends, when Jesus died on the cross, the triune community, Jesus and the Father, that relationship was severed. There was a dislocation of the relationship between Father and Son because of the weight of sin on Jesus on the cross. Because sin and God cannot coexist. You want proof of that? Look at this. Psalm chapter 5, verse 4. You allow no evil in your presence. So, just thinking, rationally, logically, if the weight of the sin of the world was on Jesus, that means that the relationship between Father and Son cannot coexist at that singular moment in time and space. When Jesus died, there was a complete severance of his relationship to the Father. Just imagine this for a moment. Jesus had always, at any one point in eternity, pre-infinite times, he had always been in constant communion, in constant relationship with the Father. You and I mean Ian, and Ian's my boy, we're like chilling. I met you a couple years ago and we're like tight. But Jesus' relationship was much different with the Father. It wasn't just temporal, it was atemporal. It was outside of time and space. It was pre-infinite. It was infinite. There was no beginning and no end to this relationship. And at the cross, the amazing thing of it all is this, that Jesus was, for the first time ever in his relationship with God, he was severed from the Father's presence. Just think about that. And not only what Jesus suffered, but can you imagine the heart of the Father? Seeing his Son die on the cross, being severed from his presence, for whom? For you and I, so that you and I could live. He did it for us. He bore our weight so that we could be received and reconciled to the Father as holy, as righteous, as unblemished because of the finished work of Jesus on the cross. He said, "It is finished." The work of salvation has been complete. And then he gave up his Spirit. The oneness of the Trinity was severed on account of the lovingness of the character of God. Think about that. He compromised his very nature. Do you see that? The oneness, the infinite relationship between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He compromised that on the basis, on the foundation of his character, of his love for humanity, that God did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but in humility took on the form of human flesh and was obedient to death, even to death on a cross. Do you see the picture, friends, of the infinite love of God for you and I? We are near to the heart of God, and that it is incomprehensible, for we are closer to God than God is to himself in that moment on the cross. Think about that. We are closer to God than God was to himself at the moment of the cross. Jesus reconciled us, and he was forsaken so that we could be reconciled. He was removed from the presence of God so that we could be ushered into the presence of the Father because of his sacrifice. There's something so beautiful there, friends. There's a great crown jewel of theology sitting right there for us to meditate on. Paul says in Romans, what then shall we say in response to these things? He says, if God is for us, then who can be against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but gave him for us all. And look what he says. How will he not also, along with him, freely give us all things? Oh, I love this. If God could get over the hump, if God could get over the chasm, if God could get over the barrier of surrendering his infinite relationship with his Son, then what other good thing do you think God would possibly withhold from you and I? Good thing, not all things. Not everything is good for you. Everything you want is not necessarily good for you. But what other good thing? God will withhold nothing that's good from you, friends. If you are in auto in Jesus Christ, and you are a covenant, you are part of the covenant community of faith in Jesus Christ, and you are part of God's protection, his divine provision is over you, God promises that if he was willing to give up his Son for you, then he will not withhold anything that is truly good from you. And you need to believe that. Come hell or high water, God is for me. Who can be against me? All things work together for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. If you're called, if you love God, it's working towards something much greater that you and I cannot see in the moment of our suffering, in the moment of our tribulation, and in the moment of our crucifixion.